What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of the Bikeriders, the new drama film from Jeff Nichols, starring Austin Butler, Jodie Comer, and Tom Hardy. This has been a movie I've been anticipating for some time. Of course, it's Jeff Nichols' first film since Midnight Special and Loving. Both came out way back in 2016. It's been a minute. Two movies I like quite a bit. This movie also premiered last year back at Telluride and was supposed to come out in December of last year before being delayed due to the SAG strike, switching distributors, now coming out via Focus. This film is an adaptation of the Danny Lyon photo book, The Bikeriders, which kind of tells the visual story of a 1960s Midwest, Chicago-based outlaw motorcycle gang. And I think when you take a story such as that, based in reality, and you put in familiar faces like Austin Butler and Tom Hardy, it sounds pretty appealing. I've often found this type of story in this kind of world in the culture, in terms of the counterculture movement in the 60s and how outlaw motorcycle gangs throughout the country filtered into that. I think the Hunter S. Thompson story about when he embedded himself with the Hells Angels out in California for years, I've always found that very fascinating. So even though this is not an adaptation of that, it is kind of similar. You have Mike Face playing Danny Lyon, and he's kind of the key framing device of the Bikeriders, interviewing Jodie Comer's character and interviewing other members of the motorcycle club. And that's kind of how you go through the story. The key appeal of the Bikeriders and why it's ultimately a successful film is that you have Austin Butler leaning completely into the mystique of his persona, his character of Benny. The Bikeriders is a film that's light on plot, but what it does have is iconography, and it's very effective at communicating that. At this point, Austin Butler is clearly evoking Steve McQueen. Jodie Comer is the key narrator of the film and really runs away with the movie. She has the most lines, primarily in her talking with Mike Face, journalist character. It's also so great to spend time with Tom Hardy actually doing a real role again. Obviously, apart from the disaster that was Capone in 2020 from Josh Trank, Tom Hardy hasn't done anything but Venom since Dunkirk came out. It's been a long time. It's good to be back with Tom Hardy, who's pretty good in this. And there's just a ton of other familiar faces completing the cast, such as Boyd Holbrook and Norman Reedus. And if you're coming to the Bikeriders expecting something incredibly pulpy or expecting the Sons of Anarchy type storytelling, you're not going to get that. This is really more about, I think, the sentiment that was 60s motorcycle culture in terms of how it fitted into the U.S. society culturally. That's really what this movie is about, and it's kind of about the hangs and fighting to hold on to that. And I think if you take that and accept that going in, you'll enjoy the movie. Like I said, it's kind of light on plot. There's no explosive standout scene. I think Comer does quite well with the accent, which she based off the real character she was portraying. She and Jeff Nichols had access to Danny Lyon's audio tapes from the interviews he was doing that Mike Face is doing in the film. So it is based in truth, and Comer very well established at this point as being great at accents and, of course, a great actor at this point. Very excited to see her career continue, obviously, since breaking out with Killing Eve. Loved her in The Last Duel, but she has some high-profile stuff coming up, such as starring in 28 Years Later from Danny Boyle, which is in production right now. And she's also in The Death of Robin Hood with Hugh Jackman. So Jodie Comer is so certified to me at this point. I'm a huge fan, but I think she does a really good job pairing with Austin Butler and kind of driving a lot of the script because, again, Butler's character doesn't have a whole lot of lines. Unsurprisingly, a Jeff Nichols staple, Michael Shannon, is in the film, and I actually think he has a pretty nice, effective little arc as a supporting character in terms of someone feeling rejected by their country when he was turned down when trying to enlist in the Vietnam War. It's nice to see Boyd Holbrook in this movie as kind of the club mechanic. Would love to hear more from him in this film. It's a small role, just because Boyd Holbrook, in a certain sense, tried to be a big star the way Butler is now. Didn't quite work out all the way for Boyd. Still a fan of his. You get one scene from Paul Sparks, who I feel like I haven't seen in a while. That was nice. Emery Cohen is in this movie, speaking of someone nice to see again. Love seeing Norman Reedus do something on a motorcycle, but do something different from Daryl from The Walking Dead. Obviously, he's pitch perfect for this. And then, of course, Toby Wallace as this troubled youth who wants to join the club, and when getting rejected, comes back to haunt the club in a certain sense. Unsurprisingly, really runs away with the second half of the film. Obviously, breaking out in Baby Teeth, awesome in the Royal Hotel last year. I think this movie will get a lot more eyes on him as well. He's really fiery in this, speaking of someone with presence. And yeah, like I said, I think really this is about the cultural sentiment of the friendship and the camaraderie of an outlaw club in the 60s and how those characters felt more accepted by this club they made up. And Comer very vividly speaks about how they make up all their own rules. Nothing really matters in this. But that kind of acceptance and camaraderie and brotherhood, that's really what you got to kind of sit with this film, and how that starts to slip away as the club gets bigger. New guys come in, more violence, the presence of hard drugs, things of that nature. You kind of feel the Tom Hardy's character's grasp of the wheel as the leader of the club. You feel that grasp being pulled away. You see it coming. But really, the movie is even more concerned about the dueling conflict, triangle, you could say, of Jodie Comer's Kathy, Tom Hardy's Johnny. They're both pulling for the control of the soul of Austin Butler's Benny. Benny, who's established early on in the movie as a bit of a hothead, bit of a reckless guy, but ultimately, because he's a free spirit, can't be tied down. And Kathy wants him to commit to their marriage over his loyalty to the club and his desire to be on the bike all the time. And Johnny wants Benny to succeed him because he believes in him most as someone capable to lead the club, as Johnny wants to get out as he's older, and he's already a family man who was a family man when he made the club and founded it. So that, I think, is compelling, but we kind of get away from, I think, some of the hangs in the second half of the film. So because there's nothing super explosive to end the movie, maybe it lacks a hair of resolution. I think you really have to be invested in the individuals and those relationships because, like I said, the plot isn't really going to, I think, pay off for you in the way you want it to. That's why I would be quite open to another dabble into motorcycle culture at this time. I mean, it seems like a layup, but like if you could cast the right person as Hunter S. Thompson, they could be a protagonist, and we could go into Hunter S. Thompson's embedding with the Hells Angels in California. And we know the Hells Angels, obviously their reputation precedes them. That would be a more pulpy, violent, crazy story. And Hunter S. Thompson himself is such a crazy figure, right, as an author, one of the most famous journalists of all time, right? I think there's a lot of meat on that bone. And I'm curious what the Bikeriders would have felt like if we didn't have Mike Faced as Danny Lyne interviewing Kathy and others, like particularly the flash forward stuff, which is just Kathy and Danny. If we didn't have that narration, which is very easy to compare to Goodfellas, the way the movie begins, we didn't have that early narration from Kathy, and we just didn't have Danny Lyne in the movie in a present tense and a past tense, I'm curious how the movie would feel. Maybe we'd spend more time with some of the ensemble. Not sure. But I like the Bikeriders for what it is. I would love Jeff Nichols to keep working. It's obviously been 8 years since his last movies. Hopefully we don't have to wait that long again. He's very capable, and I think the beginning of the Bikeriders really is ripping and effective at communicating its imagery, and that iconography, like all that, like really lands as the movie begins. And Butler really knocks this out of the park. Kind of a no-brainer layup piece of casting. Honestly, I thought he was awesome. And I'm not going to hold my breath, but let's see if Tom Hardy decides to do some more normal roles such as this moving forward with the final Venom film coming out this year and his schedule seemingly being freed up. We'll see. But yeah, shout out to Bikeriders. Liked it quite a bit. Happy to finally get it. Let me know, what did you think about it? What was your favorite aspect? And for more movie reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time.